Hello and welcome to the Radiate Wellness Podcast with your host, metaphysician, Reiki master, and hypnotherapist, Christy Clemens Hoffman. Each week, we will discover teachings, tips, and tools to radiate your best life ever with practitioners, authors, and luminaries to help you on your path. Wellness, joy, peace, abundance. What do you want to radiate?
Hello and welcome back to the Radiate Wellness Podcast. Today we radiate comfort and hope with Wendy Willow, who is the author of Silver Butterfly Wings, Signs from the Other Side, offering comfort and hope after death of a loved one. And Wendy's based in Oklahoma, outside of the Tulsa area, and she is an intuitive palm reader, numerologist, speaker, and published writer who has given readings at various psychic and alternative health fairs across Canada and the United States. She was a contributing writer to Ever Changing magazine out of Burlington, Vermont, and the Journal of Alternative Therapies, Montreal, Canada. Her articles have appeared in various publications across North America, including Purple Pagan and Waxing and Waning magazines. So glad to have you with me here today. So glad you could join me, Wendy.
Yes, I'm very pleased to be here. It's an honor. Thank you.
So your book, Silver Butterfly Wings, it's a book of signs offering comfort and hope. That's wonderful. So why did you write this book? How did it come to pass?
Well, I was a skeptic initially, even though I work with energies, I read palms, I did Reiki for a little while as well. But when you're confronted with death, it's so traumatic. It doesn't, your mind can't wrap around the finality, the fact that that person is no longer there at all. And it was such a great shock, even though we were prepared, he'd been ill and so on.
Now, this is your husband, right?
Yes, I'm sorry. I should have said that. Yeah, that was my husband who had died. And so when I started receiving these signs, a butterfly initially, there was waves of love that he wrapped me up in after he died, and pens in the grass. There's just so many signs. And at first I was like, how can this possibly be? How can somebody who's crossed over to the other side, a spirit, how can they send this? How can they have influence on our life, our earth? And as more and more signs revealed themselves, it was almost like something hitting me, like, okay, wake up, this is not random. And so eventually I started to believe in these signs. And then once I accepted, because of the timing, basically the timing, the uncanniness and the timing, once I accepted, it was like, oh my gosh, like a balm had poured over me, a soothing, healing waters had poured over me. And it was like, oh my gosh, there's more than this particular life on earth. Now, I knew that intellectually, but I had to experience that myself in order to believe.
Oh, my goodness. And how long ago did your husband pass?
12 years now. It took me a long time to write the book. I had started to write as a way of processing my grief. This is what I do. If I'm in pain or anything, any emotion that's very deep, I write. I journal, I write. And I started to write. And then when I realized that these signs were real, I wanted to record everything. So I didn't want to forget anything. And that was a way of looking back and saying, okay, well, this happened. Yes, that definitely was a sign, like the bed shaking. This is a couple of days after he died, and my bed would just shake. And I thought, this was when I was living in Montreal. We're not in an earthquake zone.
No.
And again, I guess the first week after he'd crossed over, I would feel padding on my shoulders and my hips when I was in bed. And I was shocked. Like I jumped out of bed. What's going on? I was alone in the house, no pets. And so these signs just really shook me. And the more they happened, the more I realized, okay, this is not random and you're not going crazy. That was the other thing. Flickering lights, hello, it's real. It's real. So as I progressed, as I wrote and I processed my emotions and I wrote down about the sign, then of course it comes to you, or I shouldn't say you, it does come to people that, okay, I can share this. I'm in pain, I'm going through this, but I've got hope. And how good if I can help somebody else in this situation. So
you knew that you weren't crazy.
Mm-hmm.
How did you get over this fear that others might think you were crazy?
I was still there a little bit. I guess just by talking to people, I would be very hesitant when I talk to people. You sort of tiptoe your way. Are they going to think I'm nuts? Are they going to believe? But the more I opened up myself, my natural self, and I would connect with people that would say, oh my gosh, I am so glad you said that. Because I received a sign from my grandmother, my grandfather, my husband, wife, whatever, family member. And I wasn't sure if it was authentic, and there's no proof. Well, spirit doesn't provide proof. It's belief and trust and faith. And so it just takes sort of zooming in on the right people. And you don't always know who's open and who's not, but just by talking about it. And joining groups, I joined a couple of bereavement support groups, and they were excellent. Now, not everybody had the same beliefs, and that's normal. There were some people who firmly said, nope, they're gone, they're finished, they're okay, fine. That's not my job to convince people. I just, talked about how I felt. And I think just reaching out to other people.
Yeah, it is tremendously comforting to know that our loved ones can communicate with us and can give us signs.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And like I said, I was skeptical.
Right.
But some of the things.
Now, had you and your husband ever talked about the eventuality of this?
No, not at all. This was the elephant in the room. He was a doctor, and you would think that he understood. Well, it doesn't matter, how intellectual the person is. It's the emotions of it. And even though he was in hospice for a couple of months total, we still didn't really talk about it. He talked about practical things, like paying bills and looking after the home and stuff that I already knew, but it made him feel good to talk about practical aspects. But in terms of spiritual, no, we never talked about that.
Wow, right. My dad has talked to us about, the eventuality of his passing. He was talking about how he's going to try to send us signs. So husband had never talked about that. Interesting.
Yeah, no, I think it's great that your dad has already set that expectation up and opened the door, so to speak, that it will happen. Yeah.
How long after your husband's passing did you start noticing these signs?
Well, it was actually, when he was passing, it was as if I was in a trance, or there was no time or anything when he was in his deathbed. It sounds horrible to say that, but that's what happened. And I could hear all these like angel wings or something. And I knew, I could sense that his soul was leaving. It's an experience I'd never had before. But in terms of an actual sign, I had gone home afterwards. I'd gone to my daughter's initially just to spend, she said, come on over here, Mom. And, and I was there for, I don't know, an hour, half an hour. And then I went back home to my home, and I just sat outside on the deck. It was summertime. And I just thought about him, and I looked up in the clouds, and I could see the sun sinking, and it was very sad. But once I got into bed that night, all of a sudden there was these waves and waves of love that were wrapping me up. And I thought, where is this coming from? It was nothing that I've ever felt on this earth. And it was such a reassuring, loving feeling. And I thought, well, that right away, I said, that's got to be coming from David, my husband. Right. So that I accepted right away. And then it was 2 days later, that butterfly that was on the back of his chair. And I was just crying and sobbing. It's like, how can I possibly go on? I just can't imagine life without him. And then all of a sudden my attention, like when you somebody is walking behind you or something and you turn around, you sense there's somebody. Well, I sensed there was something. And I looked up and I saw this butterfly, and it was so still and so surreal and not a butterfly I've ever seen at all. And I kind of looked at it and it drew me somehow. And it was her serenity that drew me, the stillness. And then I heard in my head my husband's voice saying, "Do not stand at my grave and weep." And I thought, oh my God, is he sending me a sign? And that was the first time I wanted to believe it. And I didn't completely. I thought, oh, come on. And then, there were other signs, but that was a very powerful one. And that's why I named my book Silver Butterfly Wings, because all that first year after he passed, there were butterflies that I saw like random coming in when you don't expect it, not sitting on a flower, sitting on a chair or something. And the reason for the silver is because one night when I was walking, there was a butterfly way, way up high in the sky where it shouldn't have been, and it transformed into a silver. It was the light changing, but it still had to be there. The light had to be changing at that point in time, and it was outlined in silver. And it was just incredible. And I realized, this is not earthly. This is another realm. This is spirit. And you can't deny the world of spirit. It's part of us.
Now, what type of relationship did you and your husband have?
Very deep, loving relationship. He had come into my life when I was done with men. I'd had a divorce. I had children by my first husband. And I said, no, I don't want to have another relationship. I'm finished. But he came in as a friend of his sister's. I had known his sister very briefly, and she introduced us, and he was so gentle and not pushy. We would go for coffee all together, in groups and this and that. And then it just happened that we became friends first, and then our relationship grew and developed. And I said, oh yeah, he's not that bad after all.
You had to have a deep connection, a deep loving connection for him to want to communicate that way. And the first sign that he gave was just to shower you and envelop you and just wrap you up in love.
Mm-hmm. And the strange thing was when he was dying, he was in the hospital, and I was thinking that we were getting closer, which didn't make sense, intellectual sense at that point. He was leaving this earth and I was still there, and I had to go on and finish my life. And he said to me, the lines between us are blurry. And I'm like, what? That's exactly what I was thinking. We're so connected that there's no definition of each person. We're becoming closer. And I could never understand, I could never figure out until after he crossed over. And then I realized, okay, so that I would be open and receptive to the spiritual signs that he's sending.
Oh my goodness. Now, what other types of signs has he sent?
Oh gosh, well, the most profound one that really, really changed my mind was when he was being cremated. And that was, I don't know how long after, 4 or 5 days, whatever. And I didn't want to know. I didn't want to have that image in my mind of him going through the flames. But somehow, actually, it was my daughter, I think, who accidentally mentioned it over the phone. And I said, no, I didn't want to know. Well, okay, whatever. It's meant to be. So this particular time and date when it was going to happen, I went outside into our backyard. And I sat under this oak tree I call Grandfather Oak. And I just sat there and I said a few prayers, and I just thought about my husband, and everything kind of went blurry. I didn't see anything. It was almost like I was in a dream. It was very quiet. And then I had this vision of David and I holding hands, and he was going through the fire, but it was okay. It didn't hurt, it was fine. And then after that was all done, I would just kind of, all of a sudden, my hearing came back, car doors slamming and dogs barking. And I thought, oh, okay, well, that's done. Now I can go in the house. And I was kind of jittery and nervous and a little tired. I went back in the house and I, got a glass of water, and all of a sudden the doorbell rang. I thought, oh, I do not want to talk to anybody. I do not want to see anybody. So I peeked out the window, and it was two men in dark suits on the front porch. And I thought, oh no, are they from the city? Are they telling me I wasn't allowed to light candles under the tree? I forgot to say that. I lit candles and everything. Maybe there's a bylaw. What have I done? So I thought, well, I can't not open the door now. So I opened the front door, and the fellow said, hi, I'm a Jehovah's Witness, and my name is David. And I said, oh my God, I just cried. I just cried and cried and cried. And the poor men were looking at each other going, ma'am, are you having a bad day? I said, yes. I said, my husband passed away recently, and his name was David. And to me, that was confirmation. Like, what are the chances of the timing, right after that happening? And that's that. Okay, this is just out of my control. This is not earthly. This is spirit sending that sign to say, these signs are real. So that was the biggest one. Mm. Yeah. But, the other ones, like the feathers in the grass and the pens and, things out of character, like apple blossoms in the fall, that's out of character. The lights, like I said, the lights flickering and radios going off and on. At first I thought, what's going on with this house? And then, I realized that other people had experienced that too. And it's always in the timing. When you're thinking about that person, or, the song on the radio, that's your song, just so many signs that it brought me a lot of comfort, because I just know, and I feel now, I feel his presence.
Yeah. What does that presence feel like to you?
Very gentle and soft, and definitely there. I'm a feeler. I don't see auras, I feel them, which sounds very strange. Like I can understand. I can feel the color pink. I can feel the color yellow. I don't actually see them. I feel them. So for me, it's more like a feeling of his presence, rather than people have visitations. Of course, I've had dreams where in a dream you're seeing in your mind's eye. But it feels really good and strong. And you know what? It just opens everything in my mind, that there's so much more out there than we experience and that we can even imagine. And I think that's important too, because otherwise you're kind of living your life, you're going about your daily routine, you have your beliefs and so on, and you sort of go outside the boundaries of what you're living. But when you have an experience with somebody who's crossed over and sending you signs, and immediately everything opens up and you're like, wow, there's so much more out there. And I wonder, to me, magic is planting an acorn and growing a tree, or planting a seed. To me, that's magic. And I'm thinking, what else is there? What else is there? What else do we not know that we can learn from one another and our time on earth here? It's a very, like I said, mind-opening.
Right. Like, what else is possible?
Yeah.
Now, when you said you felt David around you, did it feel like he felt when he was alive?
That's a good question. Well, his aura, his essence, yes. I mean, there's no question that it was him, or that it is him.
Right.
But it's not a solid presence.
Right.
So the inner spirit, yes, I would say yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So there was an unmistakable feeling to the feeling. In other words.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. There's no question. And that's when you know. Because people say, how do you know? Where do you get rid of doubt and speculation? And how do you, it's that feeling, that inner feeling that there's no question. It's there. It's like, the age old question, how do you know you're in love? You know.
No, right. Yeah, because it could have been your mother, it could have been your father, it could have been anyone else on the other side, but you just.
No, it's special. Yeah, and the other thing too is he was a smoker. I wasn't, he was. And this was like 3 or 4 months after he died. And I walked by, there was one room, a little powder room, little bathroom that he would smoke in because I didn't like smoke. So he had this one little room in the house where he would smoke. And like I said, 3 or 4 months after he died, I walked by that room and I could smell cigarette smoke. The windows were all closed. It was fall. And the house that we lived in was like, there's no close neighbors. And it was like, whoa, it had to be that room. It had to be that smell. And sometimes just before falling asleep, I'll smell that cigarette. And it's very faint now. It's been 12 years, but I still do get signs. I get signs. Actually, there was one today. There was 3 cardinals that I saw in our backyard today. And, I can't think right now, but because it comes spontaneously. Right.
Did you know that Radiate Wellness is more than just a podcast? That's right. We're also a comprehensive, holistic wellness practice. Find out about our services, practitioners, and upcoming events at radiatewellnesscommunity.com. While you're there, visit our podcast page to read more about our great guests and even donate to the podcast. If you like our podcast, you can help in other ways as well, like subscribe or follow us wherever you're listening right now. Tell a friend, a family member, or a coworker about the great content you find here. And if you wouldn't mind, please give us a thumbs up, a 5-star rating, or a positive review. Sounds like a small thing, but it really helps. You might like to know about our Facebook communities while we're at it. We have a free community, the Radiate Wellness Community, on Facebook for news and great free content. Our subscribers group is Radiate You, as in the letter U, but also, well, you. There you'll find curated replays of past classes, guest interviews, and more. And now, back to our podcast and back to our guest.
And
I'm wondering, have you ever tried to ask for a sign, like ask for a date? Let's have date night Saturday at 8:00. You show up and send me a gift.
That doesn't work. Yeah. No. Well, okay. This is a strange answer. Yes and no. I did ask for a sign on our anniversary. Our anniversary was July 22nd. That was about 12 days after he passed or something, 2 weeks after he passed. And I had signs and I thought, well, this is our anniversary. What are you going to send me? Come on, you got to send me a sign today. But I couldn't imagine anything that he hadn't already sent, like a pen, our time at the notary, which is what you do in Canada rather than lawyer. After someone dies, you're sitting around the legal stuff. And I was asked to sign a document and I couldn't find my pen. I knew I had one in my purse. I didn't have one. Nobody in the room had a pen. Somebody had to go out and ask a secretary for a pen. It was weird, but so it was our anniversary, and I was thinking, okay, now what? Please send me something. But what are you going to send? then I thought, am I challenging karma? I'd better be careful here. But, and this is also something else that's interesting. It's rarely when you expect or think about it. So I went babysitting my grandchildren like I was doing, and the babysitting day was broken up. The other grandmother would do the morning and I would do the afternoon. So I arrived around lunchtime and she's rocking the baby in the rocking chair, giving him his bottle. And the other little girl, my little granddaughter, was sitting doing a puzzle. And I walked in. I thought, oh, this is very sweet, nice and peaceful. But grandmother, would you please leave because it's my turn? And she, well, I'll be honest. She was rocking the baby and everything. And all of a sudden she starts singing. She was Irish. Tura Lura Lura. And I thought, oh my God, my husband's father used to sing that to him. And I haven't heard anybody sing that song. So I thought, okay, wow, this has got to be a sign. Usually that time that I would come to babysit and we would switch, she'd be almost getting her coat on, ready to go out the door. That's why I was thinking, it's my turn. Get out of here. What are you doing? You're here too long. So everything has to fall into place. So in terms of asking for a specific sign, I don't think spirit works that way. You can't control spirit. You can't say, look, I want a sign Saturday night. It doesn't work, but it's when you're not expecting things generally that they come. Mm-hmm. Now, in terms of a dream, I did one night. I was desperate for a sign. I said, oh, I really need a dream. I really need to know that you're still here. And, this is the early days. And I really wanted the comfort of a nice, beautiful dream. And somebody had said in my grief support group, they'd had a dream, and I really wanted one too. So I was like forcing. Well, I got a nightmare.
Oh, goodness.
It was horrible. It was like I was trying to will my husband back into this earthly life, and he had died. He'd had lung disease. So without oxygen, he couldn't breathe. He had been on oxygen. And so it was like he was struggling and trying. It was just a horrible nightmare. And I thought, okay, no, I'm not ever doing this again. Whatever comes, and whatever doesn't. But, all this put together, I came to a point where, if I keep pushing signs away and just saying, well, it's not true, is that bringing me comfort? No. If I accept what's in front of me, and they're so blatant, some of them, then first of all, I'm growing spiritually. And like I said in the beginning, I can pass this along. So I have no doubt that it's all real. And I would like to explore the spiritual world even more.
Right.
I'm in awe of you or of anybody who's a medium, because I know I can communicate with my husband, but could I do that for others that I don't know? I don't know, but I would like to explore that.
Have you tried?
No, no, I've had signs from my mother, from my father, like I say, family members, and that, signs that just come. And my husband, of course, more than anybody. But as far as, no, I haven't really.
Right. Interesting. I noticed that in part of your book, you say that love never dies. Mm-hmm. I actually teach a class called Love Never Dies. Sometimes I co-teach it with another person who's written a book about signs from her mother. Mm-hmm. We will co-teach that sometimes, and sometimes I teach it on my own. So in your book, as I said, you say that love never dies. So what do you mean by that? Do you really believe it, and why?
Oh, absolutely, 100%. Just because the person is not here in body, I believe their spirit, their soul is still alive, and you just don't sever that connection because they're not standing in front of you. After my husband passed, I felt our love grow stronger. And again, it was like, how can this be? He's not even here. But I think that those who have crossed over are there to support us in this life. They've already done the transition. They're into a realm of, I believe, pure love. That's what I believe. And I think that they just support us any way they can. And I can't just stop loving him or my mother or my father or my sister or my brother just because they're not here anymore. So I know it never dies. I think it's there for not just for them, but for us to be the type of people that we're meant to be. And if you cut yourself off from everybody because they're not here and cut yourself off from that love, then you're not growing and you're not able to share with others. So that's what I feel.
Oh my goodness. Now, part 2 of your book is called Silver Dragonfly Wings.
Mm-hmm.
How does that diverge?
That's my evolution, because dragonflies are symbols of transformation. The butterfly is usually a sign from a soul who's passed on, telling you that all is well. It's, you cocoon like a butterfly and then you open up to see the world. Whereas a dragonfly, it's more the transition part. So you're moving on, you're becoming strong, or I shouldn't say you, me, it's my experience. I was becoming stronger, more confident. I was learning to accept, and that's very difficult, especially the first year, to accept that they're not there anymore and they'll never come back, because you always hope and think in the back of your mind, I light candles, say prayers, do whatever. Maybe they'll come back somehow. Maybe there's a way. No, there's no way. Not in body. So the silver dragonfly wings is more about the transition, the learning to cope, learning to accept, and learning to live, not just survive. And that's a big step too. But in terms of the actual insect, yes, I saw lots of them the second year, which is why I kept saying, okay, well, why do I keep seeing these dragonflies with their beautiful translucent wings that all of a sudden turn silver? And so I looked up the meaning. I like to consult Animal Speak. And,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Ted Andrews wrote the book, and he gives the meaning, spiritual meaning for animal sightings. And it was transformation. So that's what the second part is all about.
I love it. Because you did figure out a way to cope and move on. Can you talk a bit about that?
I went to these grief support groups initially, and just to talk with other people that had gone through this same experience, knowing that you're not crazy, because in the beginning, you do become paranoid, or I shouldn't say you all the time. I was paranoid, constantly. So, okay, he's gone. What else is going to happen in my house? Is somebody going to come in and take my stuff? It's, wow. You don't feel like you're in your right mind. And so just talking to other people and, realizing that this is just all part of grief, that it will pass, that you will get stronger. And I was lucky enough to be on my own in a way that I could just scream and yell and cry all day if I wanted to, because you have to get those emotions out. And other people have family members still at home and they can't really do that, or they have a job and they're restricted in that way. But I was able to just open up and let it go out. I had rituals. I would buy 2 cups of coffee, because that was what David and I did. And I would pour his under the oak tree. Why? I don't know. I just thought about it. I just thought, okay, I have to keep connecting. And so I would buy a cup of coffee for myself at a drive-through coffee place, and I would buy his, take it under the tree, and I would pour it under and hope he got it wherever he is. And just making decisions about the house, to sell the house, to renovate the house, like making my own decisions. It was tough. And I screwed up a lot. I made a lot of mistakes. But this is how I became stronger. And I didn't like it very much, but that's what happens.
Right. And you're still receiving signs from David.
I am. Yeah, I am still, even though I've moved on. Actually, I'm remarried, which is why I'm in Tulsa. Never thought it would happen, but it did. And my husband is very open to me receiving signs from David. It's a spiritual thing. And it's just to understand that no matter what, love is still around us, all of us. It's not necessarily just for one person, it's for everybody.
Right, it is. You're certainly blessed to have found that again. That's wonderful.
Yes, thank you.
And I'm so happy that he's accepting of you receiving signs.
Yes, very much so. Yeah. Yeah, it's what makes us a strong relationship too.
That's wonderful. So do you feel like David has given his thumbs up for you to read?
Very strange. Yeah, I did. We met on a cruise ship, my present husband and I, and neither one of us was looking for a relationship. You know, I was a widow and so was he. And I had my family, my grandkids, and we were just, you know, he was with his group and I was with my friends, and we just clicked. But because what I do naturally is people's numerology. I try to be careful about it because some people aren't open, but you know, you sit down, you meet somebody new, you say, okay, what sign, or even if you're my age, you say, what sign are you, or whatever. And I say, what's your date of birth, if you don't mind? He was born the same year as David. So right then I said, okay, yes, I'm feeling all this, you know, good feelings towards this man. And we had parallel lives, like so many things in our lives were the same. And then when I heard his date of birth, I said, okay, this is David saying, all right, I'm sending you this man so you won't be lonely.
Oh my gosh, that is so sweet. Wow. So knowing that you had this comfort and that you're receiving signs from David, how long did it take you to just come back to yourself?
What do you mean exactly by come back to myself?
To not get over it, because you never get over something like that, but to feel like you could move on to the next chapter.
Okay, how long did that take? That took me about 6 years.
Yeah.
And when I met my present husband, it was 9 years later. So I had to open my mind. So around 5, 6 years, I said, okay, to myself, okay, do I want to be alone forever? No, I have a family, I have grandchildren, I'm happy in my house, but I want to share my life with somebody again. Is it even possible? And of course, the knee-jerk reaction is no. I had a wonderful relationship, a great marriage, no. And then I'm talking, you know, all this self-talk. I said, well, okay, fine, but you know, I was in my 60s. Do you really want to be alone forever? No. So then you have to open your mind. So this is what I did. But I'm not the kind of person that goes to dating sites or dances. To me, that it just doesn't work for me. I don't feel like putting myself out. I just feel that if it's meant to happen, it'll happen. And if it doesn't, then it doesn't. But I think, you know, like I keep saying that I had to be open to that. Like, okay, don't shut the door on everybody. You see a person over there, a man, whatever, and okay, you know, maybe not, whatever. But yeah, so it took a few years, and then it took a lot of me just telling myself that this is what I want, and also being okay with the result. Like if I had never met him, well, I'd still be back in my house and have my family. Just had my daughter's birthday yesterday. And so fortunately we have video and so on, so I can celebrate all the family gatherings this way.
Yeah, right. Now, has anyone else in the family heard from David since he passed?
Well, actually, it's the grandchildren, and they didn't even know him. My grandson was like a year and a half, and he'd never even met David because David was too sick at the end. In the last 3 years of his life, he was confined to home. And because he had lung issues, it was COPD, lung disease, we couldn't have people come into the house, especially children, because you never know if someone has a sore throat, a cold, and that. So he hadn't been out of the house. And after he passed, my daughter came over with her 2 children. And little Nathan was just looking up at the ceiling and pointing and pointing and pointing. And we're like, what is it, Nathan? And he couldn't even talk yet, but I knew that he was seeing David in our home. And then my granddaughter, I wrote about this in the book, was we were in Florida. I had taken the family on a resort, and we were going, this is very strange. We were going in the elevator to go down for breakfast. We all had our special rooms and so on. So we all congregate in the elevator. We're going down to the big, huge breakfast buffet. And Jasmine, who was, I think, about 4 at the time, 7, 8, 9, yeah, she looked around and she said, well, who's missing? My daughter and I look around. No, everybody's here. The family's here. It was my daughter, her husband, her 2 children. I had brought another grandchild along and myself, and we're looking, no, everybody's here. And then that was it. And the next day, the same thing. She looked around, who's missing? And the next, we're saying, what's going on? Okay. So I started saying, oh, well, is it Katie? Is it Janie? Is it, naming all her little friends, thinking she may have an imaginary friend along. And she goes, nope, 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 nope. And then my daughter, okay, enough of this. She bends down and she says, Jasmine, is it David? And she goes, yes. Now, she had only met him when she was a baby, so she wouldn't even remember him.
Oh, goodness.
So, I mean, that, again, that's spirit. You can't argue with that. And I think probably my daughter had, because she's so much on my wavelength. She did say that at one point her daughter was having dental work, and because of her young age, they had to put her under anesthesia. And she's a child who reacts very strongly to any medication, anything like that. And my daughter was really, really worried. And then she said, all of a sudden, David appeared in front of her and said, it's going to be okay. And she's more visual. I'm kinesthetic. She's visual. And she said, Mom, I saw him. He was right there. He said, everything's going to be okay. And it was.
Oh,
so
that is beautiful. I tell my clients that it doesn't matter if you've never met this person. If they're part of your family and if they're connected to you, they're going to be around you, and they can have even a very strong connection. Doesn't matter if you remember them or even knew them.
Isn't that interesting? I never thought that before. Mm-hmm. I thought you had to meet them and know them and understand them and be with them. But no, you don't have to at all. It works like that.
It's just beautiful. So that we know beyond a shadow of a doubt that they really are connected to us. They're aware of what we're doing. They're aware of who's in our circle. They're aware of who we're connected to, and they're connected to them too. I mean, It's just, if we need further proof that they're tapped into us, that's it. I think it's beautiful. So do you think there's anything else that we need to know about your experience with David or about the book that we haven't talked about?
I don't know, really. I think I said pretty much everything. It was, a horrible traumatic experience, but I've grown tremendously, particularly spiritually. I've become stronger and more confident as a person. I never thought that would happen, but it does. And I am very proud that I had written this book. I have another book. The first book I wrote was Reading Between the Lines, about my experiences as a palm reader. And it was published just after he died. And the thing is that the last few evenings that he was alive in the hospital, he would ask me to read to him. It was too difficult for him to read. And so I would read library books and so on. And the last night before he died, he said, I want you to read from your book. And I said, are you sure? Like, I had read to him bits before. I wanted his input, whatever. And I said, you've heard it. He said, no, I want to hear your words. And then the next day he was gone.
Oh,
so it was an affirmation for me, because he was always encouraging me to write. I had it in me. I was writing articles and so on, but he said, just sit down and write. Follow what you're feeling inside. And so I did. And now that I've got this book out, I feel that he's helped me along with this as well.
That is beautiful. And so when she mentioned your book, I had to go check it out on your website. That looks like fun. And I love the title, Reading Between the Lines. That's very clever. Your website, of course, is wendywillowauthor.com, wendywillowauthor.com. We'll put that in the show notes. And anybody listening, you can sign up for Wendy's newsletters, check out her blog, and contact Wendy as well. Do you see clients for palmistry and numerology these days?
Not since COVID, which is unfortunate. I haven't been able to pick it up again. I'm in a new country, whereas all my clients were basically in Montreal. Right. I've only been out here 2 years. What I do is online numerology, and that started during COVID, and I continue to do that. But I haven't picked up the palm reading yet, and I'm looking forward to that.
Right, I'm sure. Well, Wendy, this was very, very nice to talk with you. I love your story. I believe your story 1,000%. And I think this is a beautiful book.
Thank you so much. It's very nice to hear.
Okay. Well, take care, and I hope you write more.
Oh, I certainly will. And thank you so much for having me on your show.
Thank you.
Radiate Wellness is an international community of holistic and alternative healers dedicated to helping you create spiritual, energetic, and physical well-being. To learn more about our practitioners, services, classes, and events, or to schedule an appointment, visit us at radiatewellnesscommunity.com.